What's the last book that you read that changed the way you saw something?
Ooh, great question. My favorite mind mind changing book this year was um it was called let me look this up real quick. I can't remember the title. It's the Jonathan Haidt book about political framing.
The Righteous Mind.
Yes, called The Righteous Mind: How Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Absolutely loved it. I don't agree with him. Again, he's a guy I don't agree with completely politically, but I think his sort of psychological theory of how people form moral judgments and moral opinions is very compelling, and it changed how I think about that considerably. And I think that it helps explain the Donald Trump phenomenon in a way that I wish more people could see.
In that he's sort of
So
hacking. He's sort of hacking people's sensitivity to various things, or
absolutely. I mean, one of the things that he talks about in this book is that there are lots of different moral matrices, and liberals almost completely care about what's called the harm care moral matrices. So liberals decide whether things are moral based on whether they harm or care the most. They care for or harm the greatest number of people. So liberals are almost completely utilitarians in their moral reasoning. And actually, as a philosophy student, like I actually don't like utilitarianism. I think it's not actually that compelling of a system, and I think it's a pretty shit system for progressive as the single underpinning moral matrix of all progressive morals. But that's what, and regardless, that is in most sort of profiles that they've conducted and studies they've done. Most liberals, that's the number one leading thing that makes them decide if something is moral or not. It's called harm versus care. Conservatives, on the other hand, take into account 6 different moral matrices that sort of they use to decide whether something is moral or not. That they do care about harm versus care. They also care about another one that liberals just don't give a shit about. That conservative is very important for conservatives is fairness versus cheating, liberty versus oppression, loyalty versus betrayal, authority versus subversion is a huge one. Imagine that. Like liberals, could you imagine being morally against something that is subversive? Like,
right.
yeah, it's if anything, I'm rooting for the subversive thing, but that's a big one for conservatives. And finally, sanctity versus degradation. And Trump is, man, he's hitting all of those. And he does it in ways where liberals are scratching their heads, where he's saying, well, he's going to harm people, right? That's the whole response to Trump is this guy is harmful. He doesn't care for people. He's harmful. On our one moral matrix of harm versus care, he is in the harm side. So therefore, he is immoral. But to about half of the country, here's a guy who's talking about fairness versus cheating, liberty versus oppression, loyalty versus betrayal, authority versus subversion, sanctity versus degradation, right? I will bring respect and honor back to America. I will solve our problems as an authority figure and make people obey me. I will make Americans loyal again. I will demand loyalty from all of these different groups. I will give liberty to the right Americans and oppress the wrong Americans. This is the language that half of the country speaks. Of course they love Trump. And of course liberals are in the corner scratching their heads going, is this guy for real? Like, does anyone hear anything in this? Yeah, he's very compelling. Anyway, that stuff, that really blew my mind. And I really recommend this book by Jonathan Haidt. I'm also reading a lot of plays recently. And that's kind of the other thing that's blowing my mind. It's kind of, I've never read plays before. I was like forced to read some Shakespeare in high school. And I don't know, I just sort of like got interested. I've been seeing some more theater and like it's a thing I don't know anything about. And I just read this play called Arcadia by Tom Stoppard, and I think it's like the funniest, smartest thing I've ever read. So this is a whole world. I'm sure people are rolling their eyes, but it's like a whole world that I just didn't know was out there, and I'm really enjoying.
I might check it out. I've been meaning to like read screenplays one of these days, but haven't gotten around to it. Now, The Righteous Mind, just an aside to that, I don't know if you've heard it or not, but there's a really interesting podcast conversation between Sam Harris and Jonathan Haidt, and they're definitely
Sam
not
Harris is
totally agreement.
Sam
Okay,
Harris is a Sam Harris is a fool. I can't stand to listen to Sam Harris.
okay. Well, that would be an interesting discussion to have, but probably not on the probably don't have time for it on this podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
uh, do you make your bed?
Most days. My track record is not perfect.
It's not like a
Where
thing
most
for you.
No, it's not a big part of my life. I have heard that like successful people make their bed, and I've also heard people say the main reason to make your bed is like whatever else happens during the day, however bad it is, at least you made your bed. And I find that really compelling, but not enough to make my bed.
Mm-hmm. All right, surprisingly few of the guests on this podcast who I think are pretty successful people. Surprisingly few of them make their beds or make a thing out of it at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm a very like tidy person, but it's kind of a functionalist thing for me. Of like, it's. I have like terrible work discipline, and I kind of just like go with. I kind of just follow my. It's very hard for me to force myself to do something I don't want to do. Like I really have no self discipline. So when the sort of like muse strikes, and I'm like ready to work on something that's difficult, like sometimes you just get that. You have the right amount of coffee, and you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna write this thing. Like, let's go. Then it's like if I can't find my pen, it's like game over. Like, I'll go play video games for 3 hours. So like it's just very functionally important for me to like have a tidy workspace and know where all my stuff is and have all the tools I need because I'm always scared of like the moment will strike where I want to do some work and then like something will be wrong, like my computer needs an update or I can't find the file or the art
It's
supplies.
always where the software wants to update is when it's time to, or your
I know.
phone runs out of space
Exactly.
the moment that you need to like shoot a video or something.